Hi, everyone, and welcome to EduMatch. Thank you for joining us tonight. You can follow along with us on Google Plus as well as on Twitter using the hashtag EduMatch. Speaking of EduMatch, if you're interested in being the person of the day, then just go to our website at edumatch.education and just fill out that little Google form, and we will promote you and get you some connections. So looking forward to that. So tonight's topic, we're going to be doing sketchnoting. So we have two fantastic moderators tonight. I'm going to kick it over to Margaret and Tammy. So thank y'all and take it away.
Hi, my name is Tammy Neil. I teach computer apps and game design in rural North Florida, and I consider myself to be an entry-level sketchnoter, unlike my cohort, which I will gladly introduce, Margaret here. Go ahead, Margaret.
Hi, everyone. I'm Margaret Sisler. I'm a high school technology coach in Chantilly, Virginia. I don't know that I would consider myself an expert sketchnoter either, but I appreciate that, Tammy. I started sketchnoting earlier this year and have just kind of fallen in love with it. I've always been a artsy girl, and it really makes sense in my head when I can pull my thoughts together this way. I've always been a doodler, but really putting it together as sketch notes is something that's fairly new to me.
So we have a few other people on panel, so we're going to go ahead and let them introduce each other, or introduce themselves, starting with, on the far end from me, Miss Fagin, if you'll introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Leslie. I am an instructional technology coach in Griffin, Georgia, and I work with the middle schools and high schools in our district. And I know nothing about sketchnoting, and I am excited to learn.
I'm glad you're here, Leslie. And our other panelist tonight, Mr. Miller.
Hello, hello. My name is Matt Miller. I am a teacher, blogger, author. I've taught high school Spanish for the last 11 years or so, and I do love my sketch notes, and I thought I'd do a little something for EduMatch there. That was on my favorite iPad app, which is called Paper by 53. And so, yeah, I've been sketchnoting probably for a couple of years, kind of on and off, and just absolutely love it, and the brain benefits of it and everything.
So let's go ahead and start with our first question. And so if you're following along on Twitter, it's question 2. What are the benefits of creating or using sketch notes with students?
So, Margaret, before we jump into that question, we need to give Wendi a chance to introduce herself. Wendi?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey, everyone. Hi, this is Wendi, and I'm excited about tonight. I'm sorry, I have a sore throat, so I sound a little rough, but I have been using sketches in my class for probably 20 years. I'm a language teacher for English language learners, so it's always been a really fun and easy way to clarify different concepts, different vocabulary words, whatever. And I actually call it edu-sketching in the classroom. So I'm now in a high school, and I'm in the history department, so I'm refining quite a few ideas and trying to whittle down content into more, more chunkable and digestible pieces for my kids to grasp. So I'm glad to be here tonight.
Thanks, Wendi. Glad you're here too. All right, so you've already addressed some of our first question there, some of the benefits of sketchnoting with students. We talked a lot about how it helps us in our introductions. Would anyone else like to join in and answer that question about what sort of benefits you see for using this with students?
Well, I can jump in and talk about what I do with my students this year. One of the things I do is I teach Microsoft Office. We work towards industry certification. And so some of my students have found that the learning of Microsoft Office is not the most creative of endeavors. And so we have taken to sketchnoting the ribbon. And so each of the tabs of the home ribbon, they sketchnote those out. And I've got some kids it's really helped them, because whether they can see it on the ribbon, they can see it, they can visualize it on their notes. And that really has helped them. It's a visual anchor to what it was they were looking for.
Thanks, Tammy.
I can
Anyone
jump
else?
in.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll be glad to jump in. I mean, I love the benefits of sketchnoting for students for a couple of reasons. As a high school Spanish teacher, I know my students have gotten a lot of benefit out of sketching vocabulary words and then putting the words right under them, or sometimes not even putting the words under them. Just having that visual to connect with the new term has been really great. And then also we do a lot of storytelling whenever I teach Spanish. And that's a way that we can practice our new vocabulary and our new grammar. And when we do this storytelling, a lot of times my students are kind of like the stars of the story, and I'll just sketch this, kind of like live sketch the story as it's going. So, and it's usually nothing more than just, you know, stick figures and real simple visuals. But once we're done with the story, we have this whole whiteboard full of this visual, and it's a lot of fun, so much so that sometimes kids want to come up and take pictures of my little stick figures. And one thing that I think that illustrates, it's a quote by Mike Rohde, who wrote the Sketchnoting Handbook. Let's paraphrase at least. He says, it's not about art, it's about ideas. You don't have to be an excellent artist to create great sketch notes. As long as you can capture the idea in visual form, that's really what you're going for.
I think that's really important. That it's not about perfection or art or exactly capturing what you want to show, but really being able to put the emphasis where you want and those sorts of things. Several of our English teachers have used sketchnoting this year with their students, and they've found students that have really benefited. One used it as they were doing some visual storytelling to plan some nonlinear stuff. Most of what we plan is in an outline, and that doesn't always work for when you're storytelling. Other teachers are using it for review, and the students are getting out their crayons and the paper and really getting down into it, and they just love using something different. So that's been really awesome this year.
I want to jump in. I think that's great how you guys use it in the different settings. And Matt, I wanted to kind of tail off of one thing that you were talking about was this storytelling. And I love the fact that you like put the kids in there. I'm sure they just love it. But one thing that I've really noticed as I've become more intentional, just especially working with the high school students, is that when we are presenting or providing content, there is a definitive difference in how you even present your content when you're thinking through the lens of edu-sketches or sketchnoting, because when you start to think about ways that you can represent it with the sketches, I feel like, at least personally, my content becomes more story-like rather than lists of facts or, just rote content. And I've also noticed that, I'll go into some colleagues' rooms, they'll say, hey, come on in and can you take some notes? And for the ones who are so adept at telling stories and have anecdotes and have these interesting details, it's a lot more it's a lot easier to actually sketch that than it is for, if somebody's just listing those dates, then I'm like, oh, that's kind of tough. So now it helps me actually be a better teacher too.
I think the power of narrative really works there too, that it's just real sticky. It's, really sticks with the brain well, and I think anytime we can pull that storytelling side into things, if I think back to when I was in school a lot, some of the things that really have stuck with me since then are the great stories, the ways that content was pulled into stories. So, yep, totally agree with you.
Yeah, and plus it's fun. It's just plain fun.
That always makes a difference.
Yeah, and I think that Matt, you were talking about when you were younger, and it leads us back to when we first started sketchnoting and advice for newbies. What advice do
Okay, Tammy may have frozen right now, but I think that what she was trying to say is question 3, what advice do you have for someone who is just starting to sketchnote?
As far as teachers, I think that you need to realize there's no one way to do it, that it can look really different. So you can start off with something small as far as look at this read this paragraph and sketch something that this paragraph represents in your mind, right off in the margin in a small space, just to get kids' feet wet, just to get you more comfortable. It's all about that process.
I think something that's important to remember also is that we need to, it's a skill that we need to practice. I mean, it's kind of like lifting weights. You know, as you lift weights, your muscles grow and grow and grow until eventually you're much stronger, and you become a stronger sketchnoter by lifting those sketching weights, so to speak. And so for me, I'm constantly trying different stuff. I'm going to share my screen for people who are watching. Sorry for those of you that are just listening, but this is a sketch that I just did recently at the Illinois Ice Conference, and I've been trying something a little different and gave this a shot. Sometimes I'll do different colored sketch notes, sometimes I'll just do black and white ones, and with this, I kind of toyed with the idea of spot color, and so I did black and white with a yellow, sort of like a yellow spot that got pulled out. And you know, with figures, sometimes I'll do stick figures. On this one, I kind of did like the rectangle figure where you kind of add things from there. And so anyway, I think that's an important thing to note, is that we want to continually try different stuff, and nobody's perfect at it, and we're all just kind of like trying to lift our sketching weights to develop our sketching muscles, so to speak.
Absolutely, Matt. And even I'm going to just keep tailing off of you tonight. You're talking about.
That's fine. I'm good with that.
We had done something in class a couple of weeks ago, and we had the kids collaborating on their sketches, and we realized that having them use color took up way too much time. They were so focused on making it look pretty with all the different colors that we said, all right, you know, for the next one, we limited it to 2 colors, and we said we want black or dark blue and then 1 highlight color, and that cut down on a lot of the time, and it also made them realize how much time they were focused on the appearance rather than the actual content.
I was really excited when I saw that sketch that you did, Matt, because I saw Thomas Murray at Visti for a very similar presentation.
Isn't he amazing?
He does a great job, and I sketchnoted as well, and so I thought it was fun to see the similarities between our two. I'm trying to pull it up right now, but to see that we focused on some of the same key points, but then other things that meant more to you or meant more to me showed up in our sketches. And I think that's important when we're looking at, especially those who are starting Sketchnote. It's a skill, just like summarizing, just like determining what's important. Those skills that we work so hard at, especially in our English classes, but all across our content, those are skills that we have to learn and develop and help our students do that. And so I just find it really interesting that we can see such similarities and differences with the same presentation.
So there's a question, Sarah put up on the side here, that there's a question on how to sketchnote on Chromebooks. Well, you know, one of the things that you can do, if it's not visual, you know, if it's not writing on it in sketchbook, you know, Chromebooks, you can't actually write on the screen. You can always have the kids pull in clip arts and things like that, and bullet points underneath those. There's some creative things that you can do, like within Google Slides or PowerPoint, to provide a screen for those kids to take their notes on.
To follow up on that, Tammy, I think Google Drawings is an excellent tool for that particular thing, because it's kind of like a digital poster board or a digital piece of paper, and then you can pull in that text. You can, if you go to insert an image and you click on the search tab, you've got this huge library of Creative Commons photos that you can pull in, and you can probably find clip art through that, and you can even create images through using the shapes and the lines and everything. And even though that technically might not be sketchnoting because you're not sketching freehand, it is definitely, in my opinion, visual note-taking, which is very much the same, and you get a lot of the same brain benefits.
I think another tip for beginners I would share is, and it's hard, is not to worry about being perfect. Brad Ovenel Carter shared something in one of his videos that it was a recorded session at some conference that I watched about sketchnoting, and he said, make it a goal not to erase. And I thought that was a really good thing, because you're going to miss, well, you're struggling to erase and redraw something, you're going to miss the next big point. And I thought that was a really good kind of tip for starters. Later on, if you need to touch something up, absolutely, but when you're getting your ideas down, I think get to the point, and then you can tidy it up or add to it later. I think it's also important to know that everybody has a different method in how they do this. I like to take notes with words while I'm listening, because otherwise I get really distracted, and it's just how my brain goes. So I tweet my notes usually, and then I do my sketches as the way I process afterwards from my notes that I tweeted out, which has been working for me this year, and I really have liked doing that. I miss too much, I think, if I'm trying to sketch while I'm listening.
And I think, I don't know what was said while my internet flaked out, but it's also not about finding that fancy stylus. You don't necessarily need the paper 53 stylus. I use the big old fat Ticonderoga. I love these. It's about the tool that works for you. It's just paper and pencil, and the sketch note I'm doing for tonight only has one actual graphic on it, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. It's whatever works for you. One of the ways that I practice is listening to Voxer conversations. I sketchnote Voxer conversations because I can go back and listen to it again if I've missed something, and it gives me a chance to get a flow going. So that's just been one of the resources that I use to to find the conversations, because you don't always find the right conversations in everyday conversation.
Tammy, you bring up a really great point about it not having to be loaded with pictures or graphics. One of the things with using the sketch notes, especially in class, is just how to divide or connect different notes. You can use something as simple as a box or a line in between a couple phrases to chunk the information so that you can see it more readily at a glance. So I'm glad you brought that up.
I want to kind of piggyback on that just real quick, if I could. Whenever we talk, Leslie, I'm so sorry you were getting ready to jump in, and I jumped right on top of it. I'll go fast, then you can go next, okay? I'm going to draw something real quick, and again, I know for those of you that are listening and not watching, you can't see this, but we'll explain it real fast. So this thing that I just drew, here, somebody chime in and tell me what that is.
A thought bubble?
Or a cloud?
Thought bubble. A cloud. Okay, very good. If I told you it was a bush, would you believe me?
Sure.
Okay, very good. I'm going to add something to it really fast. Again, this isn't going to be great art, but if I add this to it, now what does it look like?
Rain cloud.
Okay, I could see that. I don't think I drew it very well.
Or a sheep.
I was going for a sheep, but it definitely could be a rain cloud with the lines going down. So yeah, the idea is that, I think anyway, that the idea is that if you can get the idea across, that's all that is really important. Squares or rectangles could be cars, so you can even use just basic shapes to represent an idea, and it doesn't have to be fabulous art.
I have a quick question. You all mentioned using Chromebooks for sketchnoting. Can you use an Android tablet? Because we're mostly a Google Apps district, so we don't have a lot of iPads anymore, but we're transitioning over to tablets and Chrome devices. Can you do this on an Android tablet?
Leslie, you can do this on any device that gives you a drawing surface. So whether it's paper pencil, whether it's Paint on Microsoft Word, Microsoft Windows 10, whatever that surface is. So there are plenty of whiteboard type apps and drawing apps on Android and you can do it just as easily there as well.
Thank you.
Okay. I have lost my questions Margaret, please help me out here.
I'm
Where
good.
are we at?
I think we've talked a lot about tips and tools or tricks to share. Matt mentioned Paper by 53. That's a great app for iOS. I love that one. Are there others? I also like Paper and a nice set of pens and some and just regular paper. There's something to be said with putting paper to pencil. I really do like that. Are there other tips and tools or tricks that you would like to share?
The Noun Project. If you haven't heard of the Noun Project, it provides an icon for just about everything under the sun, a plethora of icons. So if you are stuck on how to sketchnote something, you can go to the nounproject.com, I believe it is. Let me see. Yes, nounproject.com. They say they have an icon for everything. And so you can just get some great ideas right there on how to get started. I also love Notability. Notability is one of my go-to apps for sketchnoting as well.
I'll say as far as iPads go, there's the Paper obviously is the one that I love. I've heard people rave about Adobe Draw. That's supposed to be a really good one. And then there's another one if you start to get a little bit more advanced that's called Procreate. It's not a free app, but it gives you some different options, like you can layer and there's various things that you can do there. But yeah, I totally agree with the paper and pencil thing. I always just go with my iPad because it looks better. And it gives me the ability to undo, which is kind of important for me because I make a lot of mistakes. And obviously from the comment earlier, Brad would be like, you don't need to erase those mistakes. You just need to keep going. But that's the way that I like to go. And I know that some people who sketch get real particular about the paper that they use. Because if you just use regular standard copy paper or printer paper, all of those all those paper fibers are all kind of smushed together. It's real tight and real compacted, and it doesn't absorb the ink very well or the graphite very well. And so if you have something that's a little bit looser, that's not quite so compacted, then sometimes it'll absorb that ink. So if you even play with the different kinds of paper, you can get a different effect.
Mm-hmm.
And I
would
also
agree with that. Oh, go ahead,
Go
Wendi.
ahead. I also use Sketchnote, Sketchbook Express on the iPad. It's pretty simple to use and it's free, and it also has the layering abilities, which is nice. But you know, Margaret, I gotta say, I'm a marker nerd. I love my markers, and I love the feel of just a regular marker in my hand, and the different widths of the lines that I can make with different thicknesses. And you know, Matt was talking about the absorption of the paper, so one of the things that I started doing just the past couple years is using the refillable markers, and they also have refillable whiteboard markers. So those are a lot more useful, and I'm hoping that they're more environment friendly, but they're nice to have. So think about that when you're getting your markers.
That's a good thing. I always end up having a big bag of all the different colors and all the different tips and all the different widths, and I just think it's funny how I have this giant batch of them, but then when I sketch with my iPad, I have one stylus and one device, and so that's easier for me on the go when I go to conferences and things, just so that I have exactly what I need.
Yeah, the iPad is definitely much more portable and shareable as far as your work.
Mm-hmm. Tammy, were you able to get back to the questions there?
I think we're at the point where we are going to start sharing some of the people that we follow, some of our favorite sketchnoters, and start to wrap this up. We've definitely gone over our 15 minutes, and so you know Sarah likes to keep it as power packed as possible. So
absolutely.
I know that one of my favorite new sketchnoters, her name is Amber McCormick. She is a teacher here in Florida. Her Twitter handle is AmbiLynn, and I'm going to tag her on Twitter. I think she does amazing things.
I would agree. I love her work.
I'll put a boost out there for Amy Burvall. She's the reason that I started sketchnoting because she uses that same app that I use, the paper app, and she'll go with a black background with a real bright kind of pink and white. She's got this real kind of unique style, and I mean, it's like every sketch that she makes is like a work of art. So I think she's great.
I learned a man named, sorry.
Go ahead.
A sketchnoter named Brian Tarallo, and I just linked up with him in the last 2 weeks and have learned about his sketching. So he is at the Tarallo, and he's out of Virginia.
Oh, I will have to look him up. I would say Sylvia Duckworth's work is amazing. Love just about everything she puts out is something that I would like to share. And then Brad Ovanell Carter, he is at Braddo, Braddo on Twitter. His sessions that have been broadcast, I haven't seen as much sketchnoting lately, but his sessions have been awesome. He does a lot of capturing images that are just really great. I also tweeted out a link to my Pinterest page about sketchnoting, and there's one in particular on there that says 50 awesome resources, and it links to that session I referenced earlier from Brad Carter. There's one by Sylvia Duckworth. There's a whole bunch of different sessions that have been recorded. If you're going to get started, I think that's a slightly overwhelming list, but a really good place to find lots of resources.
And I'm throwing out one more, Sylvia Tolasano. She is known as The Languages on Twitter, or Languages, not the. I just tweeted out for her. This past November, I got to spend a couple of hours with her at Miami Device, and she just did a phenomenal job just walking us through. And so if you ever get to do anything with her, take advantage of that. Absolutely.
Yes, great stuff tonight. Great stuff. So I just wanted to really, really thank you all. Thank you to Tammy and to Margaret for moderating tonight. And thank you to Leslie, to Matt, and to Wendi for being on panel. Thank you to everyone who was tweeting, everyone who was watching. So this will be saved as a collection on Participate Learning. So watch for that. It's going to be like sent out right after this. And it's also going to be available as an iTunes podcast within the next couple of weeks or so. Perhaps a month. We're on a little bit of a backlog. I saw your EduMatch sign, Matt, so thank you so much for that. Next week, we're going to be doing live EduMatches in action. So come check us out, bit.ly/tweettalk37, and there anyone can sign up. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We actually had to bring it back for a part 2 because part 1 was just so lit. So we had to come back with a part 2. So Dr. Dorian will be helping me moderate that one next week. So sign up, and if you want to check out previous episodes, you can subscribe at bit.ly/EduMatch podcast. There's a graphic that I always forget to screen share, and I don't have it pulled up, but just check the EduMatch hashtag, and you'll see it there. So thank you again, everyone, and good night.